Hey peeps, welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about how to play Ele Shaman and Cataclysm, basically play the spec right. It is an easy spec, but there are obviously some things that people do wrong that are just costing a lot of DPS, so let's get into it. First up, let's talk about the step priority. Intellect is obviously king. This is the make and break of everything. It's going to increase your damage of your Fire Ele, all your spells and all along the line. Basically just is the biggest gain. Of course, you want to have 17% hit, and spirit also is 100% converted into hit. So one spirit equals one hit with the talent that we have called elemental precision. Next up, haste is better than mastery just due to the fact that haste is just better, period. You get more casts out, while mastery has a chance to overload and it's only 75% of the damage, while haste just gives you an additional spell with, a shorter cast time for 100% of the damage. Mastery and haste is going to be about the same around Dragon Soul with our 4 set, but right now haste is still better just due to the fact that we also don't have that much gear. Then the worst stat for us is crit. We do get a lot of lava burst resets and it's just not worth it. The stat is basically useless and you should prioritize haste mastery way more over crit and just reforge off it. If you have issues with reforging, there is an add-on called Reforge Lite. Basically what you do is you download the app, you go to the Arcane Reforger NPC, then you right click the NPC and select presets on the top. Then on the right side, select elemental. Make sure that your target level says 85 plus 3, so it equals 88, then click calculate. I personally recommend speed 1. It does lag your game for a few seconds, but it basically just puts more iterations through the thing, so it's a lot more accurate. After the little lag, you scroll down a bit, click show and hit reforge. Then the add-on will automatically reforge all your items possible. Then of course, gotta check your stats to make sure it's as close as 17% spell hit as possible. Sometimes it's gonna be a little bit over. If it's below, you have to obviously calculate again, but if it's 17.05 or something along the lines, sometimes it just be like that. Additionally, I will put a Google Doc in the description where you can see the certain amount of thresholds that you need for extra ticks of Flameshock. In our gear, we cannot reach most of them without loads of external buffs, as in Bloodlust, DI, Elemental Mastery, PI, and all along the lines, I would not overly think about it because it's most likely not worth to think about it too much. It's going to end up in a DPS loss. That being said, I personally do re-Flameshock if I have Flameshock outside of Lust in EM. As an example, on Valiona and Thurelion, I precast and everything. I Flameshock the first dragon, use Lava Burst of course because I want to get it on cooldown as fast as possible. And we last like 2 seconds into the fight once the dragons are basically on top of each other. And then I do Flameshock the other one and then Flameshock the main target again, when my Flameshock is already a little bit replenished time-wise. Question I get asked a lot, is it worth it to cancel Lightning Bolt for Lava Burst? The short answer is no. Lightning Bolt has such a short cast time, especially with the 4 set and haste, that once you are actually thinking about canceling the Lava Burst, it's most likely already too late to cancel the Lightning Bolt to even get a DPS gain out of it. So you should just keep casting your Lightning Bolt and Lava Burst directly afterwards. Obviously, if you have a very good reaction time and ping and you're 0.1, 0.2 seconds into your Lightning Bolt, canceling it for the Lava Burst is most likely going to be a DPS gain, but a very small one. It's really easy to mess it up and it ending up not being a DPS increase that is not even worth to go after. Then for the reputations, obviously this doesn't really help many of you because most people already have these reputations farmed and already have pre-read BIS, but for the people that are now rerolling into Ele or new players, this is for you. First up, we have Guardians of Hyjal. The Arcanum of Hyjal is the BIS head enchant, which is account wide. That being said, you do have the Wilderness Leg Guards under revered as well that give you a little bit of an item level boost for heroics. For Earth and Ring, we have the Earthmender boots. Technically, the Valor boots are about the same, they're literally the same stats. So either you can farm Reputation until Exalted, or you can just buy them off the auction house or farm Valor. It's basically your decision. I think that getting Exalted with Earth and Ring takes quite a while and it's not worth it. So if you have 4,000, 5,000 gold, I would just buy the boots. Earth and Ring also gives you the Cloak of Ancient Wisdom under Revered, which is also going to give you a little bit of an item level boost if you have nothing else for heroics. For Therazane, we have the Diamant's Ring, which is also a low level ring, but like I said, gives you a little bit of an item level boost if you need it for heroics. And of course, we also got the BIS Shoulder Enchant from Therazane, which is also bind on account, meaning if you already have a character that's under Exalted, you can just send it over to your other character. Most importantly, we do have Dragonmaw Clan. Dragonmaw Clan gives you the Yellow Smoke Pendant for Horde and Lightning Flash Pendant for Alliance. This is the second best pre-BIS rate neck that you can get. There is the Dorian's Lost Locket or something along the lines, which is basically Haste Mastery, which is better for Ele specifically. This one is gonna be Mastery Crit, and obviously crit is bad for us, but it is a really good option, especially since you can 100% get it once you hit Exalted, while the Lost Locket is actually quite hard to get since it's a world drop and quite expensive on the auction house. So now for the BIS race. The best race is always going to be hands down Orc until the Fire Elemental Snapshotting goes away. Orc gives you extra spell power for your snapshotting of the Fire Elemental Totem, and also the commanding passive, which gives you 5% more damage towards your pets. And yes, that also works on Fire Elemental. So obviously this is going to be the best choice. That being said, the other races are a little bit behind Orc. In P1 especially, it's not as big as in P2 it's going to be, because in P2 you're going to have your Fire Elemental Totem basically up the whole time. There's going to be maybe like 10, 15 to 20 seconds sometimes where it's not going to be up on fights because of our 2 set, which you can get from Valor really easily. And also obviously the 5% damage and the 2-minute cooldown of like basically an extra trinket is going to help quite a lot for your Fire Elemental Snapshotting. If you want to know the specific numbers of every single race and how much better or how much worse it is, you have to go on the WoWSim website and change the races in the settings. Make sure though, if you are playing Troll and you want to see the Troll gain of the 5% Beast passive, that you change the encounter towards a Beast boss, and then you can see the difference. So for the single target rotation, you want to pre-drop your totems, and then obviously you have to keep in mind Searing Totem won't attack unless you take damage from the boss. That means you have to recast Searing Totem if you are not using Fire Ele on pull. If you're using Fire Ele on pull, the 2-3 seconds without Searing Totem actually shooting is fine, because redropping it would waste 1 GCD. So what you want to do is pre-drop your totems, then pre-pot and pre-cast Lightning Bolt at around 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 1.5 seconds, depending on your cast time. Then use Elemental Mastery, Racial, Energy Gloves, Flameshock into Lava Burst, then keep Lightning Bolting until your trinkets proc, and then use Fire Ele. That's pretty much it. Then of course you want to also use your Earthshock with 8 to 9 stacks, and then of course when your Flameshock is, let's say, 8 seconds, 7 seconds left on the target, you have 7-8 stacks already. You want to Earthshock early, so when the shock comes back off cooldown, you can reapply Flameshock without any downtime, and you don't waste any charges of your Fulmination. And of course the most asked question basically, do we use Unleash Elements? Unleash Elements is a spell that basically just smacks the target for a little bit of damage and then increases your next fire spell by 30% damage. 30% damage is pretty good. It sounds good. It's not actually 30% damage because there's some weird math going on. But anyways, it costs a GCD. It costs a global cooldown, basically. So when you press it, you can't use any other spells. So in that time of using that spell, you could have cast a Lightning Bolt. A Lightning Bolt that does around, depending on your gear, way more damage than the 30% gain and the little bit of extra damage that Unleash Elements would give. That being said, if you do not use Unleashed Elements, which is the glyph that makes you walk with Lightning Bolt casting, you can and should use Unleash Elements during movement. As an example, on Chimeron, you will not use Unleash Lightning, you will use the Lightning Bolt glyph, so Unleash Elements comes in handy quite often. This is not to be used on cooldown, and I repeat, it is not a DPS gain. It would be cool if it was, and it's a fun button to press, don't get me wrong, seeing a big lava burst number is super good, but it's just not a gain, and I cannot recommend you something that makes absolutely no sense to use. It's a situation where Unleash Elements still comes in handy with the Unleash Lightning glyph, and that is when you have your lava burst up, your Flameshock still has 3 to 4 seconds left, and you can badge both spells to benefit from a 30% damage boost. What I'm trying to say here is, let's say your Flameshock has 3 seconds left, or 3.5 seconds left. You then use Unleash Elements, cast Lava Burst, and spam Flameshock while you're casting Lava Burst. And then basically, Lava Burst is flying in the air, the buff gets calculated towards Lava Burst, but very importantly, the game only consumes the buff once the flame damage spell hits the target. So while Lava Burst is flying, the buff is still active. So you can Flameshock, and the Flameshock will consume the buff, get buffed by it, but since you cast Lava Burst first, the game still calculates the damage towards Lava Burst as well, meaning you have both spells benefiting and thus batching off the 30% damage. That comes in handy very situationally, and obviously if you mess it up, it's a DPS loss. The DPS gain from this is so minimal that it's not even really worth doing. But if you really want to press the button, or you are chasing over the 100s and 99s, you can obviously do this. But like I said, keep in mind you can mess it up and it results in a DPS loss. Another thing you can do for Unleash Elements is you can get dig rats and then put them down before the pull, use Unleash Elements on them before the pull, then have the increased fire damage buff and buff your initial Flameshock with it. The damage gain of that is minimal, but you can do it basically just for free. It's just either farming them, the dig rats, or buying them for like 50 gold off the auction house. Let's talk about the AoE rotation. First up, the most obvious thing, if you have 4 or 5 targets, you want to use the Chain Lightning Glyph. If you only have 2 to 3 targets, you do not want to use the Chain Lightning Glyph. If you have a Prio Target, let's say like the dummy that I selected with Skull is Harvest, you want to use your Chain Lightning off that Prio Target, keep Flameshock, Lava Burst up on the target, and use Fulmination on that specific target because the Prio Target needs to die first. If there is no Prio Target and you're just AoEing, all you want to do is press Chain Lightning. Fire Nova is really bad. It's not worth it unless you have a lot of Flameshock out. And also, Earthquake is super useless. The spell cast time is quite long. The damage is very lackluster. It's worth it on around 8 targets-ish. So at the BOT trash, you can technically use Earthquake and it's worth it. Now let's talk about the BIS list. The BIS list is kept up on the Elemental Shaman simulation website. That being said, the P1 preset that is the BIS list does not have any RNG items from Throne of the Four Winds because they just want to keep the RNG out. Obviously, the neck with Haste Mastery, Spirit, Haste Spirit is really good. Same with the ring. You want to get these if possible. Like I said, they are super RNG, so they put up alternatives for that. But if the rings drop with the stats that you know we like, do not pass up on it if you can. We already kind of talked about snapshotting, but what really is snap? So basically, our Fire Elemental takes a snapshot of our stats, which is intellect / spell power. It does not benefit from haste or crit at all, so you can safely ignore these stats. Our Earth Elemental also snapshots from our stats, but it's way weaker than the Fire Elemental. That being said, you can spawn both of them at the same time if you are using the preset with both elementals selected. So the DPS gain of Earth Elemental for free is basically quite decent. That being said, the Earth Elemental can actually taunt adds. It does not taunt bosses in raid, it does taunt adds though. So on Anshal or Meloriac, this will most likely grieve the raid. Also, the Fire Elemental does not snapshot Bloodlust, but on Sinestra, the haste buff that goes out, actually the Fire Elemental does benefit from. So you want to spawn him before the haste buff goes out. Now, what can you use for snapshotting? Of course, all the spell power and int bonuses will increase your Fire Elemental, like Volcanic Potion, Flask of the Chronic Mind, Blood Fury, Trinket Procs, Engineering Gloves, Tailoring and Cloak enchants. Elemental Mastery, even though it increases 15% fire damage, does not snapshot the Fire Elemental, so you don't have to actually keep in mind to use it at the same time. And Searing Totem, by the way, guys, does also not snapshot. It's dynamic. It basically, every single time you get a Trinket proc or more crit or anything along the lines, it will go towards the stats that you at the moment have. So snapshotting it is super useless. Flameshock also snapshots. It snapshots of basically everything. Spell power, haste, crit, percentage damage gains. Flameshock doesn't hit that hard, so it's kind of useless to snapshot it on purpose, as in, let's say you just applied a Flameshock, it's been running for 2 to 3 seconds, you get a 30% damage buff, most likely not worth to reshock the target. That being said, let's say you're doing Sinestra, right? And you lust at the start, your lust runs out, and then you get the haste buff that you get in the encounter, and your Flameshock actually has been used without any haste buff. Once you get the haste buff, I personally would re-Flameshock, because then the lava burst resets will basically just tumble in every couple seconds due to the fact that you get so much haste and the ticks are so much faster. That being said, do not re-Flameshock just because you're using Elemental Mastery, a Trinket proc, or you're using Engine Gloves. It's not worth it. Now we're talking about the talents real quick. We have 2 talent builds that are very good on specific fights. Most of the fights you would go the Fire Elemental and Earth Elemental increased duration talent build, but on fights like Valiona and Thorelion and also Council, Fire Elemental unfortunately is not that good at target swapping, which means he will most likely just AFK and you're better off just going to Fulmination damage talents. I will put up a list for each boss fight and what talent builds you should go on the specific fights. That's it for now. This is the in-depth Elemental Shaman guide, basically how everything works. I will make a passing guide or rather tips on every single boss as well after this. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. You can also join my Discord and ask any questions if you want. And I also put some helpful weak auras and add-ons in the description that help you snapshot your Fire Ele and other things along the line. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked it. I hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next video.